r/AskReddit by Redmond Dites. What is your sex ed horror story? 6th grade sex ed. At the end of the class, the teacher opened the floor for questions. She said we could ask anything, as long as it was a serious question. The only question I remember is when a kid, male, asked, "It's okay to have sex with your sister, right?" The teacher stared at him for what felt like a minute and said, "No." My sex ed teacher brought a kid up to the front of the classroom, wearing a shirt that had 2 long sleeves, and explained what an uncircumcised penis looked like. One kid in my class asked if you could get STDs from having sex with a chicken. Kind of put him on the spot and was a little suspicious. In 6th grade, I learned the term popping your cherry from some friends in sex ed class. I went home with this newly found knowledge and accused my older sister of having her cherry popped. She broke out in tears, and my mom grounded me for a week. More of a lack of sex ed horror story, and thankfully short. A guy who I had a crush on, both of us seniors, pulled me aside one day and asks, "So, when a girl has her period, she just lays an egg in the toilet, right?" I'll be honest. I'm not sure if I answered him or just stared at him. Got it too late. It caused a lot of stress when we found out we were using birth control pills wrong. 9th grade health with Mr. Lamb. Dude was an absolute gem of a human being, but his voice sounded exactly like Barry White, like all the time. So anytime he tried to say anything remotely sexual, it sounded like the voiceover for a raunchy R&B song. Which made the freshmen erupt in laughter constantly. Poor guy just couldn't get through a lesson for 3 straight weeks. My mom's the sex ed teacher. No context needed. Damn, that must have sucked. You in therapy? I certainly am, LMAO. The only thing I remember from sex ed which was taught by the creepy lunch lady. Lunch lady unrolls a condom and stretches it as far as she could. Then she says, "I know none of you are this big, so this will fit any of you." Edit. I get it, most of you on Reddit have above average units. There is an appropriately sized drain code for you too. No, one size does not fit all. Find one that fits you. They exist. This was a co-ed class of around 200. I have no idea why the lunch lady was teaching this. She didn't teach anything else. The responses were pretty much the same as what you see in this thread. The room erupted, and nobody really listened to anything else she said. My health teacher stuck her foot in her XL condom and pulled it halfway up her shin, and then stared at the class and said, "If a guy ever tells any of you he's too big for condoms, you run as fast and as far as you can away from that." Unintentional sex ed happened for me in 4th grade. In an assignment we had to invent a new town relating to the gold rush. I named it K-porn, and I thought I just made a new word, did not know what porn was. My imagination sucks, and the town name was similar to a name I recently heard, K-porn. We had to give a reason for the name, and my unimaginative mind said they didn't know why. A teacher-parent conference later, I was confused why they were asking me about the word porn and if I knew what it meant. Zero explanation on their end. So curiosity hits me, and I googled porn. That's how my 4th grade teacher introduced me to online pornography and wanking. Teacher hit a girl in the face with a dildo. We did not learn how to put on condoms that year. Come again. The school had a briefcase of mounted dildos so that every health class could learn how to put on condoms. It was kept under lock and key obviously, and was an object of great interest to the student body, so when we got to class and saw the case on the teacher's desk we knew what was up. The teacher was 100% a nightmare and very nasty to students. So he's talking about the importance of condoms, and he takes one of these mounted dildos out and sets it on this one girl's desk. This girl was pretty sheltered and naive, and you could tell she was terribly uncomfortable having this thing on her desk. So the teacher picks it up and starts waving it in her face while asking her if she was uncomfortable, while she just sat there in silent horror. He started waving it more aggressively, and then man, right on the face. The girl screams, and the teacher immediately ran to throw the thing back in the case locked up, and put behind the desk. No more talk of condoms for the rest of the year. Edit. Lots of questions of whether the teacher got fired or punished in some way. He did not get fired for this. He was still working there 3 years later, but is no longer at the school. It's possible he got punished behind closed doors, but there was no big aftermath. He was mainly a gym teacher and basketball coach, who unfortunately also did health. 2 interns were teaching us, 7th grade, about HIV. So, you can catch it by oral, vaginal, and anal sex. That guy in the back, what about nasal sex? Everybody, shut up Diego. Well, the worst that could happen is dying by asphyxiation. Story from my mom. She taught a middle school special ed class. Her and a male colleague handled sex ed. Her first year on the job, they passed around a box so that students could write questions anonymously. The male teacher pulled a question and said he couldn't answer. Mom, wanting to be helpful, asked if it was a female question. The male teacher tried to warn her. The question was, what does cum taste like? My mom was so dedicated to educating these kids that she launched into a hypothetical discussion about how most body fluids have a high salt content, so it might take salty. The boy who wrote the question could not contain himself and blurted, "My girlfriend said it tastes like gummy bears." My mother never ate a gummy bear again. We watched a video that tried to be hip and cool about sex ed and puberty. Direct quote. During puberty, a woman's hips and breasts grow. Insert poorly done animation of a girl's hips and breasts enlarging to ridiculous sizes. No, not that big. Being singled out by the teacher because I had a unique name for a scenario, along with a boy who I didn't like. She used our names in a scenario talking about how a relationship develops. We had to stand in front of the class while she described random scenarios where we might end up having unprotected sex and why it was bad. I was not attracted to this boy, and I'm sure he wasn't attracted to me either. Hearing her talking about us having sex was nightmarish. There was a kid in class who raised his hand and asked, "What's it called when girls spray out that liquid during sex?" The teacher responded, "Girls don't do that." He said, "Trust me, it's real. I've seen it a bunch of times in videos." She never responded. That was 6th grade. Not really a horror story, rather a hilarious one. Catholic school sex ed, and they break up girls and guys into 2 rooms. A nun teaching the girls and a priest teaching the boys. Honestly, probably more informative than my friends who went to public school, taught about abstinence as well as condoms and whatnot. Anyways, the priest talks to us about masturbation, and I'll never forget his line. Masturbation is perfectly normal. In fact, 95% of men admit to doing it one time or the other. The other 5% are liars. We played STD in a cup. Everyone gets a cup of water. 1 cup of water has a bunch of dissolved starch in it, the STD. We went around swapping fluids to represent 6, and we are supposed to see if we could safely avoid STDs without protection, swapping fluids. At the end, we find out who had the STD by dropping iodine into each cup, turning the starch blue. If it turned blue, you tested positive. Everyone in the class ended up with the STD, even me, because even though I only had 1 partner and they had only had 1 before me, the one before them was a sleut and had everybody's fluids. Honestly, a very good exercise and warning. Except for that 1 kid. At the end, he dumped his test results and refilled his cup at the bubbler in order to claim he didn't have the STD. And he was good for more fluid swapping. Honestly, another good lesson on assholes who will lie about being clean. Use protection, kids. In my school, sex ed was co-ed until gender specific issues came up. So when it came time to learn how to self-check for cancers, we split into groups. When we were sent away to watch a film on testicular cancer, I said, "Alright fellas, let's watch the ball game," and got detention. I still think it was a grade A joke. Mine was basically, if you have sex you're gonna get diseases, get pregnant, and die. I was scared to have sex for a long time. A friend of mine almost started puking during sex ed when we were watching a movie about childbirth in class. It wasn't very explicit, but the blood was enough to get him as pale as the wall. Poor dude. A horror story in terms of education. In grade 9, we were given a paper that had an equation that said having safe protected sex was equal to Satan. It went: condoms and birth control lead to premarital sex, and sex without the intention of procreation. Premarital sex and sex without the intent to have children is a sin. Choosing to be sinful is the job of Satan. Condoms equals Satan. Needless to say, we had a lot of pregnant girls in our graduating year. We did a thing in 9th grade where anyone could write down a question anonymously. One was about average penis size. This was in the early 90s, so that wasn't something we could just Google. The sex ed teacher, who was highly trained at coaching football, but probably not at sex ed, told us between 7 and 9 inches. Probably every guy nervously glanced around the room and tried to put in their "sure that sounds about right" face. I was convinced for about a year that I had a micro penis. Teacher passed out candy, then explained that the candy was our abstinence, and once you eat the candy you don't have it anymore, blah blah blah, conservative don't have sex shit. The point is, my friend and I got sent to the office for moaning loudly while eating M&Ms. That's all folks. Thank you for watching. If you like videos like this one, why not like and subscribe for more? Have a nice evening.